Nitro K-9, real dog training. Greetings, dog lovers everywhere. You're listening to Nitro K-9's Real Dog Training. I'm Dave Tucker, and today we're going to talk about the pulling dog, the dog that pulls on the leash, what you can do to prevent it, and what role a harness has in this process. Nitro K-9 is the leading dog training organization in the Seattle area, but they've gained a worldwide reputation because of the experience and success rate of Steve Walter, the owner and lead trainer of Nitro K-9. For more information, go to nitrok9.com. Now, one of the major complaints of dog owners, and the reason they come to Nitro K-9 in the first place, is that dogs won't stop pulling. Now, maybe you haven't experienced this yourself, but you've all seen dog owners walking their dogs and being pulled around by the leash. The owner, not the dog. And some dogs are so powerful, you get the impression they just might yank the poor soul's arm out of socket. So what are some of the methods that people are using to keep their dogs from pulling? If you type in pulling on the leash in any search engine, this is pretty much the results you're going to find. Some trainers recommend, you guessed it, food. If your dog pulls, offer him a treat. Okay, we know how far that's going to go, right? Another method is the limp leash. That is, your dog is pulling, and as soon as the leash goes limp, you reward the dog, either with food or with praise. I've got to wonder what's going through the mind of the dog when this happens. Another one is to go in the opposite direction. That is, if the dog is pulling you one way, pull the other way. Now, if the dog sees you pulling him, doesn't he think that's okay, so he continues to pull you? And of course, there's the harness. That is, it allows the dog to pull you without hurting himself because it relieves any adverse pressure to the dog's neck. Now, if you've ever watched a dog pulling, you can see this is actually great fun for the dog. And why is that? Well, because it feels awesome. The more dogs pull, the more they want to pull. It all boils down to the dog's drive. And the easiest way to build drive is to restrain the dog. So to get down to basics, what is drive? Drive is the internal motivation. It's hardwired into the dog. It's in the DNA. It's a need that has to be fulfilled. All dogs have drives, but they have them in differing amounts. You've probably heard people talk about various drives: food drive, prey drive, pack drive, play drive. But there are two basic drives that we really need to be concerned about. First off, prey drive. And this is what compels a dog to chase and kill its food. And the second would be defensive drive. And that determines how a dog will protect himself. Basically, the two defensive drives are either fight or flight. And when we talk about drives, they're really more simple, and yet they're more complex than most people realize. On one hand, they're simple. When people talk about ball drive or toy drive, I'm sure you're familiar with that. It's the total obsession with a toy or a ball. We've all seen the dog who will play with the ball until he's completely exhausted. I've always thought that if dogs ruled the world, they would make an international holiday out of the birthday of the guy who invented the tennis ball. But simply stated, ball drive is really prey drive. That is, it's a behavior associated with killing prey, whether it's the hunt, the chase, or the actual kill. Now, on the other hand, these drives are more complex because they can't be compartmentalized in the dog. They're not like Lego building blocks. Each drive will interact with the other drives in various ways. A dog can switch from prey drive to defensive drive. His motivation will change based on the conditions at that given moment. So the drive that was previously motivating him may be put on the back burner while another drive takes over. Additionally, dogs have different levels of individual drives, and each drive has a different threshold. So depending on the circumstances, one drive may override everything. And if you consider these variations, it simply means that each dog is an individual. That is, no two are exactly alike. Now, an experienced trainer knows how to work with a dog's drives, to turn them on, to turn them off, and to use them to get the desired results. And they also know the way to build drive is to restrain the dog. You see the connection? As soon as you put a dog into a harness, he gets more pulling power. And you can bet he's going to use it. Dogs like to pull because it's fun. And dogs will pull harder in a harness. Why? Because they can. The big problem pops up when the dog's drive has nowhere to go. As he pulls, the dog is building up drive. But this drive has to go somewhere. And if there isn't an appropriate outlet, it's going to go somewhere you may not like. Now, if you go back to episode number 1, the doorbell problem, you'll remember that we talked about how dogs learn by association. The food bowl means dinner. The leash means walk time. And the doorbell means company is here. So what association does the dog make when he's pulling and building drive? Okay, while the dog is pulling, he's building up drive, amping himself up. Only there's no way to release this energy. He's stuck on the end of a leash, so he can't run it off or chase a toy or dig a hole. And these are all great ways that dogs release excess energy. So what happens? The dog will develop some association with what he's feeling. It may be the dog across the street. It may be a passing car or a kid on a bicycle. But something is going to serve as a trigger for this association. And when the dog spots that trigger later on, he gets the same rush of emotion as he did when he was amping himself up. And then, depending on the dog, you may get various reactions. Oftentimes, this results in behavioral problems. My dog, Freya, she's a German Shepherd. She likes to lure other dogs really close to her by acting very friendly and playful. And then when the other dog gets closer, Freya lunges and barks and frightens the poor dog away. And why? She thinks it's fun. Now, my wife has worked with her a lot with regard to training and providing other outlets to keep that behavior in check, but it's always lurking below the surface because of her drive. So let's sum this up. A harness makes it easier to pull. I mean, why do sled dogs wear them during the Iditarod? Exactly, it helps them pull. Pulling dogs generate drive, and that makes them want to pull more. If you don't have an outlet for your dog's drive, your dog will find one, and it probably won't be something you like. So why would you use a harness when you're teaching your dog not to pull? Let's look at this from the dog's perspective. Walking the dog is a man-made convention. The dogs didn't think this up. If you watch a dog when he's on his own, walking the way he wants to, you'll see him dart back and forth, speed up, slow down, nose to the ground, nose in the air. He doesn't run up to a human being and calmly fall into an easy stride beside him. And even the concept of being trained to walk next to a human is relatively new in the history of the dog-human relationship. You can be sure that the caveman didn't wake up in the morning and crawl out from under his saber-toothed tiger skin and then hop up to walk the dog. He didn't fasten a vine or a leather strap or a braided rope of mammoth hair around the dog's neck and then take him outside the cave to do his business. Walking with a leash is not genetically hardwired in a dog. So, how do you train your dog to walk alongside you without pulling? By using the dog's language of correction. Just like the mother dog corrects her pups, just like adult dogs interact within a pack, dogs correct each other with their teeth, with gentle nips on the neck. It's not a punishment, it's actually quite gentle, and the dog understands the purpose behind it. And that's what a dog handler does when using a leash. By applying appropriate leash pressure, the handler communicates with the dog, providing guidance and correction. It's a communication that the dog understands. The correction interrupts the dog's focus and assures the dog that the handler has everything under control. If the dog is scared, the correction tells him that there's nothing to be afraid of. If the dog is fixating over a possible trigger like another dog or person, the correction simply says, "Hey, look at me. I'm the one you need to watch." Many dog owners come to Nitro K-9 after months of tugging and pulling and are surprised to see that a Nitro trainer can have a dog walking calmly in just minutes. In many cases, the trainer is just snapping the dog out of drive and refocusing. So what is the answer? Well, of course, it's training. Training for the dog, and when it comes to leash pressure, training for the handler. Nitro K-9 teaches its clients how to talk the dog's language when using a leash. And if you're using leash pressure to talk to your dog, how effective will that be when you've got your dog strapped into a harness? Spoiler alert, it's not going to work. If you look at most dogs wearing harnesses, you'll see the dogs are lunging, snapping, barking at dogs and people. They may be reactive or aggressive depending on the dog. One thing they have in common, though, is they've been pulling for months, maybe years, and they love being in that amplified state, the state that is caused by pulling. So a Nitro trainer would take off that harness and put on a prong collar, not for punishment, but for correction. And the handler would use the prong collar to interrupt the dog's focus and snap him out of drive, and then rely on communication and relationship to develop the desired behavior. Steve Walter did note that he saw some success with the no-pull harness, and he decided to investigate. He found that the placement of the straps was such that the harness puts pressure on the shoulder blades in a way that actually causes pain for the dog, which is aversive enough to stop the behavior. That is, if you don't have any qualms with hurting your dog. And of course, in typical hypocritical fashion, the people who use these painful harnesses are often the same folks who claim that a prong collar is an instrument of torture. Go figure. If you're interested in knowing more about preventing your dog from pulling or developing the appropriate relationship between a dog and a handler, give a call to the folks at Nitro K-9. For more information, go to nitrok9.com. We hope you've learned something from this podcast, and we love hearing from our listeners. So if there's something more you'd like to know, something more you'd like to hear about, please reach out to us. Just go to nitrok9.com, click on the Contact tab at the top right corner of your webpage, and fill out the form. Make sure you let us know that you're a listener because Steve really loves his listeners. You've been listening to Nitro K-9's Real Dog Training. I'm Dave Tucker, reminding you that a trained dog is a happy dog, and at the other end of that leash is a happy dog lover. Nitro K-9, Real Dog Training.
Episodes of Real Dog Training are released on the 10th, 20th, and 30th of each month. For more information, go to nitrok9.com.